So here is Zephyr on day 9, and today was the day that I was going to do a little bit more rope work. So I have my longer line that I'm going to work on, flicking over his body, getting it around his legs, kind of all those things where they get used to it touching. And I like to really get them comfortable with the rope. And he's handling it pretty well. He had a pretty good reaction kind of when he felt it touch his little legs that time. And he's actually been very, very good about stuff touching his legs. He hasn't been very reactive at all. So then I'm just taking my time because this is a super long, it's extra long rope, but it's pretty handy for these things. So I'm going to work on getting the rope around his leg, and just by getting him to kind of move around and being strategic, so I don't have to bend down close by the legs yet, but he's pretty good about these things. And I'm able to work it here on that left front, kind of work it up the leg. And again, he's not too concerned at all about the rope. And I'm able to put that pressure on it. You see, again, I've got my students off in the left-hand corner, so sometimes I get a little distracted. But just working here with the rope, seeing if I can put pressure on it. He actually lifts and follows the pressure really nicely. So I was going to reward him with that, for that. And again, just giving him a little bit of time here to process. And then I'm going to ask again. Put a little bit of pressure on the rope. See if I can get him to lift that leg again. And what's really nice is that he lifts it and he's not trying to jerk it back away from me. He's just kind of following the pressure that I'm adding on there. So again, I'm going to reward him again. And let that sit and soak kind of for a second. And then the next time I add just a little bit more pressure and see if I can hold that foot up a little bit longer, just so he can start to trust me a little bit. I really think it's important to really establish that trust with the feet for sure, because it's really important to be able to trim them as soon as we can, keeping their angles and everything correct, because they can really get sore if you have a really reactive horse and they have long feet. That can be really part of the problem when you're trying to work them. So I've switched to the right front now. And again, he's very nice and willing and responsive. And that was very good. So he'll get a cluck and then some of his stable feed. And I'm really pleased with how responsive he is and pretty much non-reactive about it. He's just willing to follow the pressure. So now I'm going to try to set up for a hind leg, which again, I don't necessarily want to go and just put it on him. I'm going to kind of strategically place that rope and then see if I can get him to move, where then I can get the rope around one of the legs, so then I can start to do the work. So just sometimes it takes a little bit of patience here. And then I'm going to be working on that left hind. He's just standing on it just right, but he's really interested in his rewards. So he doesn't really mind all of this. And again, the work of flicking that rope down behind his legs, that's all nice prep work as well for, when we carry on a little bit more and we're working on, if we have to swing ropes around them, or when you have to wash them in a wash rack and they have to have hoses around their feet. All of this is really good prep work for if they are to get something wrapped around their leg. You want to teach them how to have a calm, relaxed response to it and kind of not have a super reactive moment. So again, very, very good with the hind leg. And I'm going to give him another reward. And he sees Timothy and you see Fergus over in that left-hand corner walking up. He's handling that pretty well. So then I'm going to ask him to kind of reposition again. And just put a little bit of pressure and see if he just follows with that rope here. And that was very good. I was pretty happy with that. I did have to cut this session a smidge short and I wasn't able to get to the hind right. But I was able to come back a little bit later and do another little session. So we had switched pins. My working students, one of my other ones wanted to use the bigger pin. So I decided then I was just going to do a little bit of this body work in this smaller pin. So this is, I think, like 24 by 24. So you see here, I'm kind of watching what they're doing, but this is a good time to release because he let me do some really good things there, building on what he was pretty worried about, because I was able to do two hands and do a little bit of movement with my body. And again here, I always find it important where I can feel their body and let me push them a little bit and just have that softness in their body. So again, I'm just going to let him think about that some. I'm just trying to position him kind of in the middle of the pin here. Going back to prepping for how I would jump on. I thought that was really good. You see me get a lick and chew response. So again, I'm going to let him kind of have that moment. And I can just, this is another time where I just am able to sit and watch in my phone his reactions a little bit. And it's going to be a little bit of the rinse and repeat. So now I'm just trying to lean and then adding the movement. It's kind of a big deal when they let you get a little bit closer in on that shoulder. He's like, "What are you doing?" And then that was very good. So that was like the first little jump where I was able to kind of bump his body some. And again, I'm going to start to try and jump a little higher. And then I also like to add where I can touch their foreleg with my leg. So you see there, I did a bigger jump and he kind of like moved around. So I'm going to do that little bit of release. Let him think about it. And again, gonna touch his leg with my leg. Sometimes that can make them very nervous, but if you're going and jumping around on the bareback and they get a little worried about you touching their foot, it kind of helps when they get used to that there. So I always like to kind of make that as part of the steps of building it. And then I'm gonna go back to picking weeds again. A good way to keep myself a little distracted from him and just letting him kind of process a little bit. Because it's really a big change for him to let me come into his body space with both hands, the rope, and movement. And kind of the next thing in adding into jumping on them is where you put your right forearm kind of along the back, and then you're able to put that pressure to help pull yourself on a little bit and jump up. And that was very good. And again, the girls were watching me a little bit, but that is kind of a little bit where you have to be careful of the danger zone, because typically when you jump up like that, they go to spin the other way. But he was good in the correction that I was able to then get him to come back. And here we're getting some nice lick and chews. Once they kind of understand, though, that, we take that I'm not going to kill them, I'm not a predator, I'm just some weird friend that does all these strange stuff to their body when you think about it. So since I did that bigger movement, then I'm going to go back and just rum it for a second. So pretty typical for him that, I pushed a little bit to see if I could get a little bit more. And so now he's telling me that worried him a little bit, so I need to back off some. So, and that's fine. Sometimes you go forward and you go back and you make those building blocks as you go. So I'm going to give him a little bit of time here. And I was actually happy with the progress I was able to make. So now I'm just going to go back and reiterate, hey, bud, we're still good friends. I still just do weird things right here, and it's not a big deal. And he handled that really well and is feeling really nice and relaxed in here, and I found that was a good place to stop for the day. So he was a good boy.